Most people don't lose control overnight. They lose it quietly, one habit at a time, one distraction at a time, until one day they wake up and realize they're not living their own life anymore. They're just reacting to notifications, scrolling without thinking, consuming without choosing, and wondering why they can't seem to get anything meaningful done. If you've ever opened your phone without knowing why, if you've ever sat down to work and found yourself 2 hours deep into content you didn't even care about, if you've ever felt like you're constantly busy but never actually productive, then you need to understand something crucial right now. This isn't about lacking discipline. This isn't about not being motivated enough. And this definitely isn't about you being weak or lazy. Your dopamine system has been hijacked by the modern world, and until you understand how this happened and what to do about it, you're going to keep fighting the same battle every single day. In the next 15 minutes, you're going to understand the invisible mechanism that's been controlling your behavior, why willpower alone will never be enough to fix this, and most importantly, how to take back control over your life in a way that actually lasts. And if you want self-control to become automatic instead of something you fight every day, I've linked a subconscious training system in the description that goes deeper than motivation, deeper than discipline, and actually rewires the patterns running your life on autopilot. Act 1. How you lost control without realizing it. The world you're living in right now is fundamentally different from the world human beings evolved to navigate, and your brain hasn't caught up yet. Every single day, you're being hit with thousands of micro-stimulations designed by billion-dollar companies whose only goal is to capture and keep your attention for as long as possible. Notifications are designed to trigger urgency. Social media feeds are engineered to be endless. Short-form content trains your brain to crave constant novelty, and the result is that you're never actually present in your own life anymore. You're always half-focused, always multitasking, always searching for the next hit of stimulation because silence and boredom have become unbearable. And here's what most people don't realize: you didn't choose this. This loss of control didn't happen because you made one big bad decision. It happened because of thousands of tiny decisions that felt harmless in the moment, but conditioned your brain over time. Every time you checked your phone out of boredom, every time you chose the easy distraction over the hard task, every time you gave in to the impulse for immediate gratification, you were training your brain to prioritize short-term pleasure over long-term fulfillment. And now, years into this conditioning, your brain has adapted so thoroughly that the symptoms have become your normal. You can't focus on one thing for more than a few minutes without feeling restless. You need constant stimulation just to feel okay. You start projects with excitement, but lose motivation halfway through. And worst of all, you've started to lose confidence in yourself because deep down you know you're capable of more, but you can't seem to follow through. And the reason you can't follow through isn't because you lack potential. It's because you're operating with a nervous system that's been rewired to seek the path of least resistance. To fix this, you need to understand the system that's been controlling your behavior without your conscious awareness. Act 2. Dopamine, the invisible weapon that controls your life. Dopamine is probably the most misunderstood neurotransmitter in your brain. And this misunderstanding is costing you control over your own life. Most people think dopamine is the pleasure chemical, the reward you get after doing something enjoyable, but that's not what dopamine actually does. Dopamine is the motivation chemical, the anticipation molecule, the neurological signal that tells your brain what's worth pursuing and what's worth ignoring. It doesn't make you feel good. It makes you want things, and whatever triggers the most dopamine in your system becomes what your brain prioritizes above everything else. Now here's where the problem starts. In the natural world, dopamine was released when you pursued things that helped you survive. Things like food, social connection, accomplishment, and progress toward meaningful goals. These rewards required effort, patience, and delayed gratification, which made your dopamine system evolve to help you stay motivated through difficulty. But in the modern world, you have access to artificial sources of dopamine that give you massive hits of motivation and anticipation without requiring any real effort at all. Scrolling through social media, watching short-form content, playing video games, eating hyper-palatable junk food, consuming endless streams of information that feel productive but lead nowhere, All of these activities flood your brain with dopamine immediately, effortlessly, and endlessly. And your brain is a learning machine, so it quickly figures out the most efficient path to dopamine. And that path is always going to be the one that requires the least effort for the maximum reward. Once your brain learns that you can get a dopamine hit by picking up your phone instead of working on your goals, it stops seeing the point of hard work. Why would your brain motivate you to do something difficult and uncertain when it knows there's an easier, faster, more reliable source of stimulation just a tap away? This creates a devastating pattern where you lose the ability to pursue anything that doesn't offer immediate gratification. You become reactive instead of intentional. You stop making conscious decisions and start operating on autopilot, and your life begins to feel like it's happening to you instead of being directed by you. And this is why willpower alone doesn't work anymore, because you're not fighting against a lack of motivation. You're fighting against a brain that's been chemically conditioned to prioritize the wrong things. Act 3. Why your will is no longer enough. When most people realize they've lost control, their first instinct is to fight back with brute force willpower, and this almost always fails for predictable reasons. The first mistake people make is trying to force themselves into extreme discipline overnight, thinking that if they just push hard enough and resist every temptation, they'll eventually break through and become the person they want to be. But what actually happens is they exhaust themselves mentally, their willpower runs out by the afternoon, and they end up binging on the exact behaviors they were trying to avoid, which leads to guilt, shame, and the belief that they're just not cut out for self-control. The second mistake is trying to eliminate everything at once, deleting all social media, throwing away their phone, cutting out every source of pleasure, and hoping that deprivation will somehow create discipline. But deprivation doesn't create discipline. It creates frustration, and frustration always leads to relapse because your brain will eventually rebel against extreme restriction and pull you right back into the old patterns, often harder than before. The third mistake is trying to change behavior without changing environment, which means you're still surrounded by the same triggers, the same temptations, the same cues that trained your brain to act this way in the first place. You can have all the motivation in the world, but if your phone is still next to your bed, if your workspace is still full of distractions, if your daily routine still contains the same decision points that led to bad habits, then you're setting yourself up to fail over and over again. But the biggest mistake, the one that almost everyone misses, is trying to change behavior without addressing the subconscious patterns driving that behavior. Your conscious mind might want to focus, to work hard, to build something meaningful. But if your subconscious mind is still programmed to seek instant gratification, to avoid discomfort, to prioritize the path of least resistance, then you're going to be at war with yourself every single day. Every decision will feel like a battle. Every moment of focus will require exhausting amounts of willpower, and eventually you'll burn out because human beings are not designed to live in a state of constant internal conflict. So instead of fighting your brain, you need to reprogram it, and that starts with resetting your dopamine system. Act 4. Dopamine detox to regain control. A dopamine detox isn't about punishing yourself or living like a monk. It's about giving your brain a chance to recalibrate so that normal, healthy activities feel rewarding again. The first step is identifying your sources of toxic dopamine, the activities that give you massive hits of stimulation for minimal effort. For most people, this means your phone, especially social media and short-form content, junk entertainment that you consume mindlessly without any real enjoyment, constant information consumption that makes you feel busy but never moves you forward, and any habit where you find yourself scrolling, watching, or consuming without making a conscious choice to do so. Once you've identified these sources, the second step is creating zones of calm in your day, periods of time where you intentionally remove all artificial stimulation and allow your brain to experience boredom without reaching for a quick fix. This doesn't mean you have to sit in silence for hours. It just means creating moments where you're not constantly feeding your brain novelty. This could be the first hour of your morning without your phone, meals without screens, walks without podcasts or music, or even just sitting with your thoughts for 10 minutes without filling the space with content. The key here is consistency over intensity. because small daily periods of low stimulation are far more effective than one extreme detox day, followed by a return to old patterns. The third step is replacing toxic dopamine with earned dopamine, activities that release dopamine naturally because they involve effort, progress, and real accomplishment. This means physical exercise where you can feel yourself getting stronger, deep work sessions where you make tangible progress on meaningful projects, skill development where you can measure improvement over time, and anything that gives you a sense of earned satisfaction rather than passive consumption. And the fourth step, which most people skip, is restructuring your environment to make good choices automatic and bad choices difficult. This means putting your phone in another room when you work, deleting apps that waste your time, using website blockers during focus hours, removing visual triggers that pull you toward distraction, and designing your space so that the default action is the productive action. This is where most people fail because behavior is driven by the subconscious, and if you want discipline and focus to run on autopilot, the subconscious millionaire system below is designed exactly for that. It goes beyond surface-level habit changes and actually rewires the subconscious patterns that determine what you do when you're not consciously thinking about it. Act 5. The next level, sustainable control. A dopamine detox is powerful, but on its own, it's only a temporary reset, and here's why. Your subconscious mind controls approximately 90% of your daily behavior, which means that most of what you do throughout the day, the decisions you make, the habits you follow, the reactions you have, all of this is running on autopilot below your conscious awareness. Your subconscious is essentially a collection of learned patterns, automatic responses, and deeply ingrained beliefs about who you are and what you're capable of. And if those patterns haven't changed, then even after a successful dopamine detox, you'll eventually slip back into the old behaviors because your subconscious will pull you back toward what feels familiar. This is why so many people start strong with discipline and focus, but then a few weeks or months later they find themselves right back where they started, wondering why their motivation disappeared and why they can't seem to maintain the changes they worked so hard to create. The reason is simple. They changed their behavior consciously, but they didn't reprogram their identity subconsciously. Real, lasting change doesn't happen when you force yourself to act differently. It happens when you become a different person at the subconscious level, when discipline stops feeling like a battle and starts feeling like who you are. This is the difference between someone who has to fight against distraction every single day and someone for whom focus is just their natural state, between someone who struggles with motivation and someone who's internally driven toward their goals without needing external pressure. The real solution for long-term control isn't just detoxing from dopamine. It's reprogramming the automatic patterns in your subconscious so that the behaviors you want become the behaviors that happen naturally. When your subconscious identity shifts, when the story you tell yourself about who you are changes at the deepest level, control becomes effortless because you're no longer fighting against yourself. So let me make this clear. You are not weak, you are not lazy, and you are not broken. You've been conditioned by an environment that was designed to hijack your attention and keep you in a constant state of reactivity. A dopamine detox gives you the reset you need to break free from that conditioning and take back control over your focus, your time, and your energy. But if you want that control to last, if you want discipline to become automatic instead of exhausting, then you need to go deeper than behavior and work on the subconscious patterns that drive everything you do. If you're serious about taking back control over your life, don't rely on motivation, don't rely on willpower, and don't assume that surface-level changes are going to be enough. Start with the subconscious, reprogram the identity that's running your life on autopilot, and watch how everything else falls into place. The subconscious millionaire system is linked below, and it's specifically designed to rewire those deep patterns so that success, focus, and self-control become who you are, not just what you do.